Well, the history of marriage is a history of change. Every society, almost without exception, throughout human history has had some institution called marriage in whatever language the country or society spoke. But they were all very different. What marriage was 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome is very different from the marriage we have today, although many of the elements and even many of the ceremonies we have taken as part of our history. The institution of marriage in the world, in parts of the world today, in Africa and Asia, are different from the way marriage is practiced and regulated in other parts of the world, the West, the United States, and so on. And yet they all have some kind of institution called marriage. And throughout its geographic diversity and throughout its existence in societies over time, there has always been something that's recognizable as marriage and yet very different in its rules, in its responsibilities, in its roles than the way we think of marriage in our society today. In fact, in the United States, confining our look to just our country and thinking about it just over the last few decades, let alone the entire sweep of human history, there have been profound changes in the institution of marriage within our own country, within the lifetime of many of the people watching this film. There have been at least 4 major changes over the last several decades in the institution of marriage here in the United States. We ended the government denial of people's ability to choose for themselves whether to terminate a failed or abusive marriage. We allow people to divorce. We allow people to make that decision for themselves. Changing marriage from what it had been before, a relationship based on compulsion, to a relationship based on choice and commitment, the people's commitment to be there as a matter of their own decision and choice. Another major change, just within our lifetime, just in the United States, has been to end government interference in such important personal questions as whether or not to engage in sex, whether or not to engage in sex without risking a pregnancy, whether or not to engage in sex with the use of contraception. And that important change was fought over on the battleground of marriage. And today, most Americans take it for granted that of course you should be able to use contraceptives, that of course people should be able to decide this for themselves. But when the Supreme Court had to step in to make that ruling in 1965, not back in the Civil War, but in our lifetime, the court based its ruling allowing us to decide for ourselves whether to have sex without risking a pregnancy, thereby decoupling procreation from marriage and from the way it had been regulated before. The Supreme Court based that ruling, that important right to privacy, right to personal freedom decision, in part based on its look at what the institution of marriage meant. And it talked about how marriage is a relationship of bilateral loyalty, of commitment among people, not a relationship through which the government should be propelling some other agenda or through which people should be put at the service of some other cause. It's about the relationship and the decisions and the shaping of life between the couples, between the couple, the people themselves. So this important question of autonomy and choice and reproductive freedom and contraceptive decisions and all of that and sexual and intimacy decisions were all contested on this battleground of marriage and led to this change of decoupling procreation requirements from the decision to be in a marriage. And a third major change that took place in our lifetime was ending race restrictions on who could marry whom. In the lifetime of many of the people hearing this voice and watching this video, it was taken for granted that the government could say that you can't marry the wrong kind of person based on somebody else's thinking. And at times, majorities, huge majorities of people believed that was the right way. And it was defended by the judges, by the politicians, by religious leaders thundering from the pulpit. When the Supreme Court considered the question of whether to end race restrictions on marriage, it was reviewing a lower court judge that had written in defense of a statute prohibiting interracial marriage. The judge in that case had said, Almighty God created the races, black, white, red, yellow, and Malay, and he placed them on separate continents that they might not mix. And but for man's interference with God's divine plan, an interesting way to talk about slavery and bringing people around, these races would be separate, and that's how it needs to be. This was how the race restrictions on marriage were defended. And when the Supreme Court struck those down, in the best named case ever, Loving versus Virginia, that wasn't 1,000 years ago, it wasn't 100 years ago, it wasn't even 50 years ago, it was 1967. And when the court made that ruling, more than 70% of the people opposed it. But look how far we've come. So that was the third major change in marriage since just our lifetime. And in the fourth major change, we ended the rules, the so-called definition of marriage that was part of the law that said that women who married men lost legal rights, in fact, lost their legal identity as separate people. That whole Mr. and Mrs. his name thing reflected the law of marriage, which said that they become one, and the one is him, and she should be grateful to be staying in the home and taking care and not being able to have a bank account or own property in her own name and contracts. Well, of course, we changed all of that, and today, most of us think that's laughable. But those changes took place in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So marriage has always changed. It's changed in part to reflect people's understanding of people who had been excluded, of people who had been oppressed, who had been denied, but who wanted to participate. And one of the important things to understand about these kinds of legal changes, these kinds of changes in institutions, is that when we change a restriction, when we end an injustice, that is not redefining the institution. It is making it available. It is making it accessible to the people seeking to participate. Women, for decades and decades and decades and decades, were denied the right to be lawyers. And a case even went to the US Supreme Court, which rejected a woman's effort to become a lawyer, to even just get a law license. Well, we kept fighting, we kept battling, and when we eventually ended that exclusion, and women were allowed to become lawyers and practice law, we didn't have to come up with some new word for what that was. Women were lawyers. Lawyers could be women. It didn't redefine what a lawyer was. It ended exclusion. It opened opportunity. And that's what this struggle is about. When gay people participate in marriage, it doesn't change anyone else's marriage. It doesn't redefine the institution. It opens it. It allows people to participate and to have those same rules, those same responsibilities, and that same respect within the institution, which has always been defined as both enduring and changing.